Becoming a berserker wasn't a career path. It was a calling or a curse, depending on who you asked. Most Viking warriors were farmers with axes. But berserkers? They were chosen for something darker. Chosen for their strength, their fury, or the way they didn't flinch when they bled. Some sagas claim they were marked by Odin. Others say they were born wrong. Too wild for the village. Too dangerous to ignore. No one trained to be a berserker. They were found. And once found, they were forged. Berserkers weren't just any warriors. They were Odin's men. Fierce, feared, and barely tethered to the world around them. Their name has no clean translation, but it likely means bearskin, a reference to the cloaks they wore and the beasts they tried to become. Before you could become a berserker, you had to become something else. You weren't just trained, you were transformed. They wrapped you in bear or wolf skins, not to stay warm, but to become the beast. You believed the spirit of the animal would merge with your own, its rage, its strength, its refusal to retreat. Then the real test began. They starved you, froze you, beat you, kept you awake until shadows on the walls started whispering back. Some locked you in pits, others forced you to drink brews that made the world melt and your fists clench on their own. One of those brews may have contained Amanita muscaria, a red-capped mushroom that didn't make you stronger, just more dangerous. Historical accounts say the rage began with chills, chattering teeth, swollen faces. It looked more like a fever than fury until something inside snapped. And when it passed, they collapsed like men recovering from illness, shaking, empty. Your body stopped listening to your mind, and that was the point. But sometimes, even the most respected warriors lost control. In battle, something snapped, something primal. Their rage became animalistic, and that scared even their own brothers. No one really knows what caused the berserker's rage. Mushrooms, fermented herbs, a trance whispered by Odin himself? Whatever it was, once it took hold, it didn't let go. If you cracked, you were out. If you survived, you still weren't a berserker. You were just ready for the next step. The final test wasn't strength, it was surrender. You had to give up control completely and do it on purpose. Berserkers were expected to enter a trance called Berserkergang, a state where pain stopped, fear disappeared, and the only thing left was violence. To reach it, you bit your shield, howled like wolves, and worked yourself into the frenzy. People said you ran barefoot across snow, that you didn't flinch when stabbed, that your axe moved before you even saw the enemy. Some sagas describe you tearing through shields like cloth. Whether that's myth or history, depends who survived to tell the story. You didn't wear armor you didn't need to, or at least you told yourself you didn't. While others strapped on chainmail and polished helmets, you stepped onto the field shirtless, sometimes wearing nothing but a wolf pelt or a bearskin cloak. Not for protection, for fear. You wanted the enemy to see you and think the gods had sent a curse. When the first wave of soldiers saw a man screaming at the sky, bare-chested in the snow, biting his shield like it owed him money, the enemy flinched. Your weapon? The axe. Not a decorative one, a real one. Two-handed, iron-headed, built to split shields and crack helmets in half. Some carried swords, but axes were preferred. Cheaper to make, easier to replace, and far more terrifying when covered in blood. Shields were optional. Most preferred swinging with two hands. They said you chewed on iron, that you broke spears with your fists. Maybe you did. Truth didn't matter. Fear did. For most warriors, the worst part was the battle. For you, it was the waiting. Before combat, they isolated you. Sometimes for days, no food, no fire, just cold air, raw meat, and the sound of your own breath echoing off the walls. You stared into the dark until it started staring back. Some berserkers were kept in longhouses, chained to the walls. Others were sent into the forest with nothing but a dead animal and a deadline. Don't come back until you're ready to kill. This wasn't superstition, it was strategy. You were dissolving, so when the moment came, you wouldn't hesitate. When the gate opened, they didn't want a man, they wanted a storm, and you were about to become one. One of the most legendary moments in Berserker history happened at Stamford Bridge in 1066. A Viking army under King Harald Hardrada was retreating across a narrow wooden bridge, pursued by a much larger Saxon force. Suddenly, one berserker stepped forward. Alone, axe in hand, he blocked the entire crossing. He fought off the Saxons single-handedly, holding the bridge long enough for Harold and the rest of the Viking army to escape. Some say he killed 40 men before spears from beneath the bridge finally brought him down. His name was never recorded, but every Viking remembered what he did. Berserkers weren't used everywhere, only when it mattered most. Sometimes they were held back, then unleashed at just the right moment to shatter an enemy line. What made berserkers terrifying on the battlefield made them a problem everywhere else. So you survived, barely. But the fight wasn't over. Not even close. They didn't stitch your wounds, they shoved them shut with bare hands and sealed them with hot iron. When the pain hit, they poured salt into it, literally. Or stuffed it with spider webs and moldy bread and hoped for the best. Infection wasn't rare. It was expected. If your bone snapped, they yanked it straight and prayed it stayed that way. If your fingers went black, they cut them off with a blade they just used to slice meat. And if the pain got too loud, they handed you a horn of fermented honey wine. If that didn't work, you'd pass out eventually, or wish you had. Being a berserker meant accepting a short, brutal life. Many berserkers died early in battle, and if the battle didn't kill you, your mind might. Some berserkers couldn't live normal lives. They started fights in their own villages, attacked people for no reason. Others wandered into the woods and never came back. The old legends say they turned into bears, cursed to live like wild animals, too broken to stay among men, too dangerous to bring home. Even outside Scandinavia, berserkers were infamous. Catholic priests described them as men possessed by demons. On the battlefield, you were a legend. In the village, you were a shadow people avoided. In fact, the kings and lords of Scandinavia often chose the best berserkers to serve as their personal guards. But even then, they kept their distance. You could clear 6 men in 5 minutes. That's not someone you invite to dinner. By the thousands, even Viking kings had seen enough. King Eric of Norway outlawed berserkers entirely. In Iceland, anyone who went berserk and wasn't restrained, banished by law. The rage that once built legends was now seen as a threat to law, order, and faith. So, do you think you have what it takes to be a berserker? If so, congratulations. But the story doesn't end here. If you thought surviving battle was brutal, wait till you see how Vikings crossed into a world they didn't know existed. With no maps, no compass. Tap this next to see how far they really went.